My name is Winifred Caldwell, though everyone calls me Winnie. At 65, I've learned that patience and persistence are more powerful than anger. But nothing could have prepared me for what awaited at my beach house on this early summer Friday. I had been looking forward to this holiday for weeks, a few days of solitude, the steady rhythm of the waves, and the scent of salt in the air. My suitcase rattled against the car seat as I navigated the narrow Outer Banks road, the familiar dunes rising on either side like old friends, welcoming me home. As I turned onto the driveway, my stomach dropped. 3 cars, none of them mine, were scattered across the gravel. Music blared from the open sliding doors, laughter and shouts bouncing off the walls, mingling with the sharp scent of fried food. My garden, my pride, was trampled. Flower pots lay overturned, sand mixed with beer cans in the yard. The wicker chairs I had rescued from a garage sale last year were buried under towels and scattered laundry. I stepped out of the car, hands gripping my suitcase so tightly I thought I might crush it, from the terrace. Paige, my daughter-in-law, appeared. She was standing as if she owned the place, wearing my favorite apron, the one I had stitched myself 20 years ago, and her gaze cut through me with absolute disdain. Behind her, children I barely recognized darted around, kicking a soccer ball near my red geraniums, squealing with glee. I swallowed hard, forcing my voice steady. Paige, I didn't know anyone was here. Her laugh hit me like a wave, sharp and cruel. Oh, you knew exactly what's going on. Winnie, why did that old parasite come? There's no room here. The words stung worse than any physical blow. My legs wobbled as if the sand beneath them had turned to water. The laughter of the children, the smug glances from her siblings, the way she claimed my home as her own, it was all too much. My suitcase felt heavier than ever in my hand. I took a step forward, trying to steady my shaking body. But the energy of the invasion, the chaos, the audacity pressed down on me. The air between us was thick with contempt. I realized then that this holiday would not be quiet, and the day I had envisioned would unravel before it had even begun. As I stood frozen at the threshold, the kids continued to run. Paige's voice rang again, and I knew I would have to face the full extent of what had been done to my home. I stepped into the house, each footfall echoing on the hardwood floor as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. The smell hit me, first burnt food, perfume, and the faint tang of spilled soda. My eyes swept across the living room, and my heart sank further. Towels and discarded clothes littered the couch and chairs. The kitchen table was covered in paper plates, half-eaten sandwiches, and cups tipped over. My meticulously organized spice rack had been knocked sideways, a faint clatter still ringing in my ears. Through the open doors, I glimpsed my garden, once my pride and solace, red geraniums, which I had planted with careful hands every spring, now lay crushed under a soccer ball. My wicker chairs, selected after months of searching, were soaked with wet towels and strewn across the patio. My eyes lingered on the small herb pots along the railing, broken stems, and dirt scattered. As if a storm had swept through, memories rose, unbidden hours spent kneeling in the sand, carefully planting each flower, countless mornings washing, waxing, and tending the deck, the joy of arranging furniture in perfect harmony, imagining the laughter of family gatherings. Each of these memories now felt like shards piercing my chest. The children's shouts rang out again, bouncing off walls and glass doors. They ran past me without notice, kicking a ball that narrowly missed a bookshelf. Paige's laughter floated through the house like smoke, mingling with the chaos, her presence dominating every corner. I tried to breathe, to steady myself, but a sharp pang caught me in the chest. My eyes fell to the floor near the sliding doors. Among the scattered debris, my heirloom vase, the one that had survived storms and moves for decades, lay shattered, its pieces glinting cruelly in the sunlight. I sank onto the edge of the couch, hands trembling, staring at the ruins of something I had cherished far more than I had realized. Paige leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, a smug smile curving her lips. Her children darted around the living room, shrieking and squealing as if the house had been theirs for years. Behind her, her sister, Mara, and a man I assumed was her brother-in-law, lounged on my couch, ignoring the mess around them. The audacity of their presence pressed down on me like a weight I couldn't lift. "I don't understand why you're so upset." "Winnie?" Paige said, her voice syrupy, deliberately calm. "We're just using the house. It's empty most of the year anyway. Why should it go to waste while no one's here?" I straightened my back, summoning the steadiness I hadn't felt since stepping onto the driveway. "Paige, this is my home. I've lived here, maintained it, and cared for it for decades. You can't just waltz in and treat it like your own." Her laughter was sharp, brittle. "Oh, come on. It's a beach house, not a museum. You're overreacting. We're family. We're making memories. Besides, it's not like you come here that often." Memories flashed through my mind, the painstaking hours spent planting, sanding, cleaning, arranging, every detail. Every decision had been mine. And now, they acted as though it belonged to them. My chest tightened, rage simmering beneath the surface. I wanted to shout, to push, to make them feel a fraction of the humiliation I felt. Paige's eyes flicked toward me with the calculated ease of someone used to having power. "Look, Winnie," she continued, "we've spoken with Roberto. He agrees this house should be more active. You don't need to control every inch of it. You don't need to make a scene. We're just helping." The words dripped with condescension, every syllable a reminder that my son, the boy I had raised, had allowed this invasion. I gritted my teeth, forcing myself to breathe, to steady my voice. "Helping," I repeated. "You call this helping?" Paige shrugged, unconcerned, turning her attention to her kids who were climbing over my furniture. Mara smirked beside her. The audacity, the entitlement, they were suffocating. I looked toward the kitchen to gather myself, and my eyes fell on a stack of papers left carelessly on the counter. They looked official, legal-looking forms with stamps, signatures, and bold letters. My stomach twisted. A cold realization swept over me. This wasn't just arrogance or carelessness. This was deliberate. They weren't just occupying the house, they were planning something much more serious. Chapter 4. Memories of Sacrifice. I sank into the nearest chair, closing my eyes for a moment, and the present chaos faded into the past. I saw myself 20 years ago, standing on this very plot of sand and scrub, a young widow with nothing but determination and a small savings notebook. Each weekend, I drove the long stretch from my apartment in Norfolk, hands blistered from hauling materials, knees scratched from climbing over uneven dunes. I remembered the hours spent sewing dresses, uniforms, curtains, every penny carefully saved to lay a single brick, paint a single wall, plant a single flower. My son, then barely a boy, followed along when he wasn't in school, asking endless questions, eyes wide with excitement. "Mom, are we really building our own house?" he'd ask. And I'd smile, pointing to the foundations we had dug together. Not just a house, Robbie, our sanctuary, our home. I saw the nights alone, lanterns flickering, stitching by hand, calculating the mortgage payments. The endless list of repairs and improvements, every detail from the exact shade of cream on the walls to the placement of the windows for the ocean breeze, was chosen with love, with care, with hope for a life that neither poverty nor grief could steal. Opening my eyes, I looked around at the chaos of today: broken flower pots, scattered towels, children running rampant, my heirloom vase shattered on the floor, and I realized, with a sinking weight in my chest, that this house was more than wood and nails. It was every ounce of my sacrifice, my independence, the proof that I had survived and thrived on my own terms. This house was my life's work, and they were trying to take it from me. I returned to the kitchen, my heart still pounding from the confrontation, and my eyes fell on a stack of papers Paige had left on the counter. At first glance, they looked ordinary letters, forms, and some printed emails, but as I read, a cold dread settled in my chest. The first document was a medical report, claiming I was mentally incapable of managing my property. The signature was unfamiliar, the stamp smudged, and the assessment completely false. Beneath it, I found property transfer papers already filled in with Paige and my son's names. Each line, each official-looking stamp, screamed deception. Their plan was meticulous, a trap laid with careful precision to strip me of the home I had built, brick by brick. I felt the weight of betrayal settle over me. The people I had trusted most had orchestrated this, quietly and deliberately. Behind my back, I opened my phone and froze. Paige had posted photos online, tagging herself and her family with captions like "our beach retreat" and "making memories in our new house." The images mocked the life I had nurtured for decades. My gardens, my hand-stitched curtains, the furniture I had restored with care, all twisted into props for their lie. Shock gave way to fury. I had spent decades building this life, raising my son, paying for every detail myself, and now it was being stolen before my eyes. But beneath the anger, determination began to burn. I would not be outmaneuvered. I gathered the documents carefully into my tote bag, my mind already forming a plan. Bank verification, lawyer consultation, documenting the property, and gathering evidence they would leave no loophole for Paige and her family. Clenching my fists, I drew a deep breath and felt the first spark of control returning. Paige had misjudged me. I would reclaim my home, my independence, and my dignity. And I would do it legally. The next morning, I drove into town, the cool sea breeze doing little to calm my nerves. My first stop was the bank, where Mr. Delgado, the branch manager who had known me for over a decade, greeted me with a raised brow. I laid the stack of documents before him: medical reports, forged transfer papers, screenshots from Paige's social media posts. "Everything checks out," he said, scanning my accounts. "You have the funds, and no one else has access." Relief mingled with a steely determination. I wasn't defenseless. Every penny I had saved, every dollar earned from years of sewing and tailoring, was still mine, and it would be my shield. By mid-morning, I was sitting across from attorney Helen Morris, a specialist in elder property fraud cases. Her office smelled faintly of leather and coffee, a quiet sanctuary of logic amid the chaos of my emotions. I explained the invasion, the falsified documents, the social media posts, and Helen listened, nodding thoughtfully, taking notes with precise efficiency. "Procedural delays are inevitable," she said, tapping the pen against her notepad. "Courts move slowly. You need a complete record photos of the damage, receipts for repairs, and a clear timeline of the events." I spent the rest of the day photographing every broken flower pot, every scuffed floorboard, the shattered heirloom vase, and even the scattered papers that Paige had left behind, receipts, old mortgage statements, and my own notes from construction and decoration. All were meticulously organized into folders, each labeled and dated. Every detail was part of a plan, a methodical counterattack to reclaim what was mine. Confidence surged through me. For the first time since arriving at the house, I felt the tide of power shift back into my hands. I was no longer just a victim. I was a strategist. Helen's warning echoed in my mind, but it only fueled my resolve. I would be thorough. I would be precise. And no delay, no procedural obstacle, would prevent me from reclaiming my home and my dignity. I arrived at the beach house just as the morning sun glinted off the water, a mix of anticipation and steely resolve coursing through me. Parked discreetly at the edge of the driveway were Helen Morris, my lawyer, a uniformed police officer, and a notary with a briefcase full of official documents. I took a deep breath, feeling a sense of control I hadn't felt in days. Today, the tide would finally turn. Inside, Paige was perched on my wicker couch, coffee in hand, pretending the house was hers. The children were still running between rooms, oblivious, and Mara leaned against the doorway, smug as ever. When the group entered, Paige's confident facade faltered. "Good morning," Helen said firmly. Stepping forward and placing the eviction notice on the table, the officer produced copies of my property deeds, signed and notarized. Paige's eyes widened as she read the documents, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. This isn't legal," Paige stammered, attempting to assert authority. "It is," the officer replied evenly. "These are verified records. You and your family are here without permission. You must vacate immediately." Mara tried to argue, pointing to the children and the mess, claiming it was only a family gathering. Helen calmly refuted each claim, emphasizing the evidence of premeditated occupation and the falsified documents they had prepared. The notary confirmed the authenticity of every deed. Paige's panic grew, the mask of control slipping with every word. She shouted at the children to stay calm, but their laughter and confusion only heightened the tension. I watched, feeling a strange mix of relief and vindication, as the weight of their deception began to crumble around them. "You're evicted," Helen stated finally, her tone leaving no room for negotiation. Paige's lips trembled, her plan completely unraveled. The children stopped mid-play, staring at the adults with wide, uncertain eyes. For the first time, they seemed to understand the seriousness of the moment, though not its full implications. I stepped forward, steady and resolute, letting the authority of the law speak for me. Paige opened her mouth again, but no words could counter the pile of evidence, the presence of the officer, or the firm stance of my lawyer. The tide had turned, and the house and my independence was mine once more. By mid-afternoon, the house was filled with the chaotic sound of hurried packing. Paige barked orders at the children, who scrambled to gather their toys and clothes, while Mara tried to orchestrate the removal of their luggage. The weight of shame was visible on their faces, a stark contrast to the confidence they had worn just days before. Boxes were stacked haphazardly in the living room, suitcases zipped closed with exasperated sighs. Paige muttered under her breath, her previous bravado replaced by a tense, forced composure. The neighbors who had gathered on the street whispered amongst themselves, curious and judgmental, some taking discreet photos of the departing family. The social backlash had begun, subtle yet undeniable. and I felt a quiet sense of justice watching it unfold. Once the last bag was loaded into the cars, I walked through the house, assessing the damage. Broken flower pots had been replaced temporarily, furniture shifted back into place. I checked each lock on the doors and windows, installing new deadbolts where necessary, and set up cameras around the property to monitor any future intrusions. Hiring a part-time caretaker provided another layer of security, ensuring the house would never again be overtaken without my knowledge. I moved through the rooms slowly, touching the surfaces I had restored, remembering the countless hours spent tending to this sanctuary. Relief mingled with satisfaction. The house was mine again, both physically and symbolically. The children's laughter and Paige's muttered complaints were replaced by the serene rhythm of the ocean waves outside, as if the world had exhaled alongside me. Sitting on the terrace, the sun low in the sky, I let my gaze sweep over the property I had fought to protect. The house stood intact, a testament to decades of work, resilience, and careful stewardship. As I leaned back in my chair, a new thought surfaced quietly in my mind. Perhaps, one day, this home should serve a purpose beyond family disputes. Perhaps it should be left to charity, to create joy for others rather than breed conflict. I settled into the wicker chair on the terrace, the salt-tinged breeze brushing my face as the waves rolled steadily against the shore. The beach house was finally quiet, the chaos of the past week reduced to echoes in my memory. I let myself breathe fully for the first time in days, feeling the tension in my shoulders ease slightly. This house, every corner of it, represented decades of work, sacrifice, and determination. I had fought to protect it, and I had won. Memories of past struggles floated through my mind: late nights sewing uniforms, early mornings planting flowers, the endless grind of raising my son alone. Each challenge had taught me something essential: resilience, patience, and the value of trusting my own judgment. Standing alone against Paige and her family had tested all of those lessons, forcing me to act with both caution and strength. I ran my fingers over the railing, thinking about the independence this house had always symbolized. I realized how much I had grown, how capable I truly was. The victory was not just over the intruders, it was over fear, doubt, and the lingering sense of vulnerability that had haunted me in quiet moments. I felt empowered, grounded in the knowledge that my decisions mattered and that I could protect what I had built. A small envelope rested on the table beside my chair, bearing my son's handwriting. I picked it up, hesitant, knowing that even though the house was mine again, some relationships would not heal so easily. The words inside might reopen old wounds, or they might offer a small bridge across the distance that had grown between us. For now, I tucked the letter close and turned my gaze back to the horizon, letting the rhythmic pulse of the ocean remind me that life moved forward. The house was mine, my independence intact, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a profound sense of peace tempered with cautious hope. Weeks later, the house hummed with quiet order. I had arranged for a part-time caretaker, someone reliable to tend to the property when I wasn't here, and installed a few more cameras to monitor the perimeter. Every lock had been updated, every document reviewed, and my estate plans finalized to ensure my wishes were honored without dispute. For the first time in decades, I felt the security of complete control over my own life. The beach air carried the familiar scent of salt and sand, mingled with the faint aroma of blooming flowers I had replanted. Walking through each room, I checked the furniture, the linens, and the kitchen. Everything was in its place, the chaos erased, the memories intact. The house no longer felt threatened, no longer felt vulnerable. I had restored not only its physical order, but its symbolic significance as a sanctuary I had earned through years of labor and love. I paused on the terrace, gazing out at the horizon, letting the sun dip toward the water. My heart was steady, my mind calm. Justice had been served, and I had acted decisively to protect what was mine. Yet, a quiet thought lingered in the back of my mind. Could forgiveness ever be extended to those who had betrayed me I didn't know? What I did know was that boundaries had been set, authority reestablished, and my autonomy reaffirmed. I had survived betrayal, reclaimed my life, and preserved my dignity. The waves whispered against the shore, a constant reminder that life moved forward, and so would I, cautious, empowered, and free to live fully on my own terms, carrying lessons learned without surrendering the control I had fought so hard to secure.